First of all, I want to say happy birthday, George. Today is George's birthday. And I know when we were planning all of this, we said, George, are you sure you want to do this? It's on your birthday. We could choose a new date. He's like, no, I want to do this. So George has so much passion for what he does. So welcome to our session with George Alderete. We're going to have an intimate conversation about gray coverage. But first, I'd like to set up the session so that everyone has the best learning environment and we create the best experience. So I'm Karen Odell. I'm your Keune Education Manager for the Western United States. And I have another young lady that's going to be helping me today. She's my sister. We don't look alike, but she's my sister. I call her that because I love her so much. But Jamie Kaufman is the Keune Education Manager for the Eastern United States. Now, Jamie and I today will be feeding all of your questions to George, and then he will give you the answers to all of the group. So there is a chat bar, so you can type all of your questions in, and we will feed those questions. Right now, you're on mute, but there will be an opportunity to unmute yourself if we need you to verbally ask the question. And also, there is a little gallery, so you can click on the gallery and put it in speaker view, and you're able to see George on the big screen. But just in case you don't know who he is, let me introduce you to George Alderete. He is our creative Keune color ambassador. And he inspires people all over the globe. He teaches all over the globe, all over the world. And he is an award-winning colorist, a NAHA winner several times. He's been featured in many, many magazines, Marie Claire, Vogue, Modern, and he's known for his editorial work. And George has such a passion for helping others and bringing out the beauty in others. So we're so excited to have him here today. And he is here to help you bring out the best in your clients. So George, talk to us a little bit about what you're going to do today.
Well, hello, everybody, and I just want to thank you for all participating. I know it's kind of a trying and uncertain time right now, but I really appreciate that you're all here today, and I'm here just basically to help in any way that I can to give you a little bit of perspective of what I think of great coverage and how I usually like to formulate. And I know that all of you have so many successes in formulation. So not only will I be able to share what I'm sharing, but I think by doing this together, we'll be able to learn off of each other. And I think that's the key in learning all the way across the board. So I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about just methods of gray coverage that might not be as conventional or as manufacturer specific, but in the real world and what we do to address those situations with challenges that we might have, or even some successes that we might have. So I think that's really important. And really to get your participation, I know this is a little awkward. It's not like a setting of a demo or a look and learn, but I think that we can really get a lot done with today on information that we all have to share with one another. Does that sound good? If it does, just shake your head because I know a lot of you are muted. But when you have your questions, just feel free. I really want to talk about, first off, just really jumping into it, just the different categories of the color. I do have a swatch book here, and I want to just kind of really go over them. And I really want to touch on background, undertone, where you want to take the undertone. Do you want to either get rid of it, neutralize it, or do you want to enhance it, or do you want to just make it more of a natural effect? And I think those are things that we have to really consider when we're doing formulation for gray coverage. So if anybody has a question at the top of their head, there's somebody behind me, that's Bill. You may have seen him on some of my posts. He's always video taping everything and taking pictures to do posts. So all of you guys will be on there later on today. And so hopefully he'll tag all you guys. So if anybody would like to open with a question or just something that off the top of your mind, I'm really open to any of that. Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, it's so good to see you, Mickey. What's going on?
Oh, nothing, just enjoying a beautiful day here in Washington.
Oh my God, I bet it's gorgeous.
My question is, in Washington, we use a lot of chlorine in our water to clean the water systems. and just the city, and they dump extra chlorine in the water in the springtime to clean the pipes. And when I used to live in Florida, Florida has a lot of sulfur in their water, and so it's a water question and how to combat unwanted brassiness in the hair that as a result of the amount of minerals and metallics that are in the water.
Okay, good question. Thank you, Mickey, for that. And I think this is something that we have issues across the board in the United States. Different water, well water, minerals in their water. And I think that sometimes we don't have that opportunity when somebody comes in that we're going to be doing a service on. We don't have that time to do the extra step, which is clarifying and neutralizing. And I think that's really important. I know that for us here at Keune, we do have a clarifying shampoo, but I often also think about maybe giving that, offering it to the client to do it a couple of times at home. But then you have to consider too that the water that they're using to rinse their hair is going to be taking them backwards. So, and I don't know if you have any filters in your salons, but that usually helps. But clarification is always key. So even prior to the service, if you can have them come in a little bit earlier. I know right now it's going to be kind of strange with the timing elements that we're going to have to get used to, but clarification would be the number one thing, either 1 or 2 times. Here's what I would do. I would take the clarifying shampoo that we have, put it through, run it through with a comb, bag her, and let her sit. And not somewhere where the air conditioning is going to be above her, but somewhere where that cuticle can actually open up and help to take out the residual deposits of the water or the minerals. Does that make sense? Mickey, did that help?
That makes perfect sense. Yep.
Okay.
Sure did.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a step that we used to do back in the day when we had that luxury of time. But now with all the quickness and everything that's happening, it's kind of difficult to put the pre-treatment and the post-treatment. So that's something that I think we have to figure out how to navigate to do it either at home and maintain it without actually lessening the durability of their color. Because we know if we clarify it, then they're doing their, you know, they have a glaze on there that might kind of wash that out and then expose the rawness of the color that we've lifted them to. And that's something that I'd like to talk about as well later on. But thank you for that question, Mickey. I hope that helped.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, good. How about you, Angela? You have anything, food for thought over there? You might want to unmute, baby.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Hi.
I like your pink. I love your pink.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have no makeup on, you know, quarantine.
Hey, listen, you don't want me to lift this hat. I'd have a big bouffant of hair.
Actually, I'm new to Keune. So I switched right before my state of Michigan got shut down. I got my box in the mail like 1 day after the shutdown. So
tell me your experiences and how you've been, I mean, since, well, it was so quick.
I've only used it on myself.
And what do you think?
I like the consistency. I like the smell. I took one class a couple weeks ago here for like the intro. I'm super excited, but a lot of my clients are gray, and so gray coverage is where my money is. So I'm looking forward to this class. I'm coming off of using Scruples, but I've used a lot of color over the years. European, you know, just Schwarzkopf, Colorly. I can go on and on. You know. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, but I'm just excited to learn and make sure I cover my clients' grays.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an issue that we always have. So what I'd like to do, since, you know, you're new and we have some, I'm sure, veterans here that have experienced the color, and if you can jump in when you can to help out Angela out with any of your experiences, that would be great as well. But I just want to go over the composition just a little bit, because there's some things that I tend to forget, even when I'm formulating, and I tend to forget, like, oh, why didn't I use maybe mixed color, or when would I use mixed color, or would I use a UC in combination, and what's the background and the composition of the color? And I think that's really key, because our color line is really have or comprised of a really good built-in brown, a really good coverage system, but sometimes we have to remember to fill out our formula, and we forget that, and we always have that voice in the little back of our head that always tells us, okay, she says she doesn't want warmth. And I know what I need in that gray coverage formula is just a little bit of warmth or a little bit of life, right? So we try to ignore it. So here's what I would say to that and how to address it. Always consider, and if you're taking notes, please write this down because it's in key. Always consider the existing pigment of hair color, not what's missing. And in gray coverage, we always target what's missing, right? That is part of your equation, but you have to remember what's the percentage of their natural hair that's left. And we have to formulate for that as well. So thinking of that, if she's got 50%, let's make it easy, and she's a level 5, right? If she's a level 5, then I have to consider if she says, I don't want any warmth, that part of my formula equation has to be on the cool side. But I know that I need warmth in there in order to control the other 50%. So I'm going to have to mix a ratio. So I want to talk about composition really quick, and I'm going to just lift the book up so you can see it. So if you can see this really well, in the natural series, you're going to see a combination of all 100% background. That's going to be your go-to or your staple, and remembering that our composition is on the cooler side. Okay, so it's completely different, and I'll explain that in a minute. So this is 100%, so this is always going to be a part of that equation. But what if you need a little bit more translucency or vibrancy? That's when you're going to scoot over. So now you're going to see maybe a 6.1 up here, or a 9.1, sorry, I'm looking at it upside down. So the composition is going to be 50-50. 50% of the brown and then 50% of your tone. So that's something you have to consider. So I might want to do, let's just say, an 8.1, a 6.1, but I might need a little bit of warmth. So that is perfect to go over to, let's see, where's it at? It's going to be on this side. And that's a perfect opportunity. And I think this is probably one of the most forgotten categories, which are the 03 series. So in the 03 series, you see that there's 50% of the brown in the level 6. You got a 0, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So you have a 0, that's going to be another 30%, because the second number is always 30% of whatever you're using. And then you've got 20% of your gold. So wouldn't this be a great opportunity to add the 03 to my combination of an N, or even a 9, of an 8.1 or a 6.1? Absolutely. Let me tell you why. For this category, when you look at it, you've got 50% of your brown, you've got 30% of 0, but 0 acts as a placeholder. So now what you have is you have 50 and 30 equals 80. So you have 80% of brown in that color, with only 20% of the gold. So the brown is really going to take over, because it's your background color, over the 3, but the 3 is going to help you to cover the gray as an underlying tone. Does that make sense? If it makes sense to anybody, just shake your heads. Okay, great. So that will always help me, and I always think about that. The same thing happens when you're working with, let's see. Here they are, the UC series. Here's what I want you to remember with the UC series. Yes, are they created for ultimate cover? Would you agree? Yep. All right, but remember that the ultimate cover aren't double pigment. And that's a key, because most manufacturers with gray coverage use a gray coverage system that has double pigment. So since it doesn't have double pigment, it has just a little bit more pigment, we've increased the alkaline in order for it to open up the cuticle and allow the color to drop in. Does that make sense? So where would I be able to use this? If I have a really good formula that I'm working with all the time, and I think, you know what, she's gotten a little bit resistant. And the reason why she's become resistant, and this is from my own experience, I think of clients that I worked on, and I would always remember the number one question is that the formula you used the last time? I loved it. And all of a sudden I've been doing them 5-10 years, right? And what happened is I didn't consider that their life cycle has changed. And maybe the gray has become a higher percentage, and I keep using the same formula, but yet it's not working the same way that it initially did in the beginning. So now I have to consider, okay, so if it's not working the same, what is it that's different? Her life cycle. So now my formula has to change. And this is when I can look at, could I, if I love my formula that I'm using maybe a natural series or a 6.3, Could I use an ultimate cover and add that into my, if you will, cream into my coffee? That's going to give me a little bit more alkaline, and that's going to open it up to drive my normal formula back in. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Now, let's flip it. What if you use a UC series and you're using a level 6 UC and you think, okay, I always use a 6N, but remember there's more alkaline, so it's going to look like a 6.5 visually. So now it's going to look hollower to your eye only because of the alkaline source. Does that make sense? So UCs can either work with you, but we have to sit back and think about it. Where do you want to add a little cream to your coffee? That's when I love to work with the UC category, because that's going to be my little cream to my coffee to give me a little bit more flavor to my formulation. Cool? So I want you to consider that. Also, I want you to think of the composition of the 2 3s and the 3 8s. The 3 8s are another forgotten formula additive because it's perfect for me. A 3 8 is the same thing. You've got your 6, 50%. You've got your 3, 30%, and then you've got your 8. So that's 20% of brown. But here's the difference between this and the brown in the natural series. This brown is a natural brown. It is a warmer brown, very similar to what's built into our So Pure line in visual effect. So could I use a 3 8? Absolutely. This is why 3 8s work really well, especially in semi when you're low lighting. So let's just say you have an 838 that you want to low light with right here, but you're afraid that it might grab the base and make it muted on the porosity of the ends of that blonde hair. But consider this, it's a warmer brown, so it doesn't get muddy or murky. It stays more clean visually across the board on the length of the hair. So it's perfect for low lighting. So that's why I like to use the 3 8s. There's like a kind of a, they're called hazelnut, so they have that kind of hazelnut warmth to them. So those are just other things that I like to use. I'm remembering if you need to be a little bit lighter, there's nothing wrong with doing from the scalp to mid shaft with the purest form of the color. And then if you want to go lighter, then just add the clear equal parts and you go up a level. So now your 8 will become a 9, and then you can pull that through the ends. Those are other little things that I like to do in formulation, is have a couple of bowls set up that way. So as I'm working, I know exactly what the hair is dictating for me, where I need to use it. And that's really important. And sometimes we forget it. Sometimes we just do. There's times, and probably some of you experience it, where the percentage of gray is a lot heavier in the front, but not so much in the back. So is the formula going to be the same in the back as it would in the front? No, because the back has more natural pigmented hair, and maybe she doesn't want the warmth. So that's going to be my concentrate of a 619 or a 6.1. You see where I'm going? And that's going to help to refine the undertone. And then I might want to formulate and add a 3 8 or something else, or a UC to the formulation that I use in the back, but maybe where the gray is more dominant in the front. So that's something that you always need to consider. Just look at the palette that you're working on and think of, this is all different. It's always different. It's just like highlighting when we do dimensional color. That's what we need to consider. So I hope that helped a little bit. The other thing I want to talk about in gray coverage, which is really key, and I learned this from somebody in Amsterdam, which was we always forget about the Ultimate Blondes and the 1500 series. If you have a really high lift blonde that wants some gray coverage, 15, 31, 15, or 1038 is really pretty, but they're gonna give you a beautiful level 910 sandy taupey color that's going to give you the coverage of the gray. And remember that the mixture is 1 to 2. I was pleasantly surprised on somebody that was 80% gray, 20% pigmented hair to the level 5. She loves to be blonde. She's Latina. And so I did a 15, 31 on the base. It gave me the lift, but only brought her pigmented hair 5 up to a warmer level 6, And then it gave me coverage. So it was a perfect base to work off of without having to combat. Here's what was happening. I was doing 8s, I was doing 6s, combinations of the two, and it was still coming up brassy and warm in 1 week. Does that make sense? So I wanted to get rid of that brassiness. So by using the high lift, I sheared it up, got the delivery of the penetration of the pigment, and then it allowed me to go in and do my dimensional color and give me a beautiful blend. And her gray coverage had more durability and longevity without any undertone because it passed that undertone level. And when it left the hair, it was more of a dingy, just gray hair. Does that make sense? Because I remember she was 80%. So dominant 80% of the pigment was that hair. Cool. Is there any other questions out there that anybody might have?
So George, during this pandemic, I know a lot of people have let their hair grow and they decided, well, hey, you know, I like this gray coming through. So if they just wanted to blend that, can you talk to us about a product that we can just blend that gray with as well?
Well, we have semi. And semi is a beautiful, beautiful choice to blend. And I want you to consider this in semi. I know that maybe some of you have had other demi-permanents that you used with heat before, and the timing on those particular semi demi-permanent colors has always heat 20 minutes, room temperature 20, which will give you a 40-minute application, right? But in our semi, we don't utilize heat. So what you're going to notice is the oxidation period of our demi-permanent is going to be very brown. It's going to look like it's taking the hair really quickly, but it's not. You can't fret over that. You have to just let it lay and sit there for the 20-minute process, and you get a really beautiful gray blending. So that's when the 3/8 come in mind. That's what I would do for that, or that's where I would add a little bit of my mixed tone in order to combat some of that. And remembering, you're going to be coloring the hair, not covering it when you're using semi. So that's how I would position semi. So let me give you another example. You have a client. She's got a little bit of gray spattering in throughout the hair, and she wants dimensional color. She likes highlights, but she doesn't want to commit to a touch-up. This is the perfect opportunity to go ahead and do the foiling application or the hand painting, and then go back with, say, one of my favorites, I would say 932 right here. And 932 would say red activator. Now, who can tell me why red activator? Any of you? Because remember, we have 2 activators now for semi. We have activator and we have red activator. So Angela, I know you're writing notes, so write this down because this is key. If that little bit of gray is at any moment resistant, then I'm going to choose red activator, because remember, when I'm doing it at room temp and in open foils, I don't have heat. So my volume is higher in my red activator. It is now 7%, where activator is only 5. So that 7% in that red activator is going to help me to get better delivery of my demi-permanent semi-color, to get a blend of colors. So now that color that was in there, 30%, is going to then blend into your dimensional color and give you beautiful highs and lows. And that's where I like to use 932. Why 932? Because it's not a threat to anybody. It's not too warm and it's not too cool. It's a gold pearl, which is really cool. So it's a perfectly balanced level 9. And that's what I like about working with 932. There's a couple of others that I love to tone with, and you might want to on some, you know, you have those women that have that beautiful gray and they have some pigment that's still spattered through it, salt and pepper, and you have to figure out how much pepper and how much salt. So this is a perfect opportunity to take a 10-2 and a 7 and maybe just put that on there. It'll cool out some of that yellow dinginess in the brassy gray, because sometimes that happens to gray hair color, and that'll help to control that, but give it a beautiful, brilliant shine. So give it a really beautiful pearl violet. And so I like to use that a lot, and not only for blonding, but also for gray coverage. When they have a beautiful gray client that looks, I have a godmother, she's 100% gray. It's the most gorgeous gray, but it gets a little dingy. So a 10-2 and a 10-7 will help me just to brighten up. And then if I really wanted to, I could use semi silver, which is the softest of all of our demi, you know, it's softer than gray. So if I use my silver, I'm going to get just a beautiful, beautiful, brilliant shine on that hair, especially when it dulls out. So that's how I like to work with that. Did I help, Karen? Was that what you were talking about?
Absolutely. And Angela has a question. She said, going back to the UC color, would you say
Yes.
that it makes the hair appear a touch lighter than the target color because of the extra alkalinity?
Yes. Who asked that question?
Angela?
Angela? Yes. Um, so the question that Angela's having is, would UC make the hair appear a little bit lighter? Yes, about a half a level. So you need to consider that because the alkaline that's in there, that's the alkaline in the ceramides, that's going to give you a little bit more sheerness. So I always like to call them hot pockets. They look like little hot pockets. So what do I need to do? I need to add to my formula or go down a level in my formulation. So instead of maybe in the UC series, instead of using a 7, let's just say 3.5, I might want to just bring it down to a 6.35 and consider the ratio, dropping the ratio down just a little bit. So in other words, instead of 30 grams or a half ounce, I might use 20 grams. So I'm still using a darker level, but having a little more ammonia, so I'm not going to overshoot and get hot pockets. I'm going to get a really better blend or saturation of color and tone. Did that help, Angela? Okay, cool. So anything else that I can address really quick here? So we have plenty of time. Oh my gosh, it's already 2:30. Time's flying.
George, I do have one.
Yes.
I would really like for you to elaborate on it a little more because I know that Jamie and I and Amber work the hotline, and we get a lot of calls coming through the hotline because someone will say, okay, well, I used the formula that I used the last time, but it didn't cover the gray. So just because this formula worked today doesn't mean it's going to work a year from now, correct?
Absolutely. So great question. I talked about life cycle earlier, and we have to really consider this. I think percentage of gray is one of the most difficult things to read. It really is. So I did this experiment with myself on some swatches, and I'm going to share a swatch book with you that I would love for you to go on site and get this because it's a great learning tool. But what I did was I stopped formulating for the percentage of gray and I formulated for the remaining pigment. So if she was 50-50, I formulated for the 50%. Okay. And what that did was it helped me to understand the undertone, where I was lifting her to, and at that level, and what I needed or what was missing in the gray, because it was hollow, right? Because it was beautiful on the natural hair, but was hollow on the gray hair. And that's what told me what it needed. And it needed either more brown or more warm. So here's what I did. I backed it up a little bit. The next process, I actually pre-softened the hair. Now here's what you're gonna do, and a mentor of me taught me this a long, long time ago, and I thought he was crazy until it worked. So he said to me, Georgie, he was serious when he said this. He said, I want you to think of, you want to be a cool 5 in your gray coverage, but I want you to pre-soften right out of the tube with an 8 level warm color. Okay. And I thought, but she doesn't want warmth at a 5 and I'm using an 8. But he wasn't really considering what I was doing. He was saying, no, you want to combat the gray by allowing that 8 to pre-soften the hair, open it up, and you're using a gold, but at a level 8. So it's very sheer. So when you drop in your cool color, what it's going to do, it's going to anchor that color in, and it's going to give you better rounded coverage because now you're filling out your formula. Does that make sense? Okay, so Angela, you're shaking your head. So here's what I would do. Even though it's a level 8, the amount of pigment at a level 8 gold is different than, let's say, a 6 gold, right? It's a lot warmer at a 6, but it's a lot softer at an 8. So I was thinking warm, warm, warm. I can't put a level 8.3 on there. But all it did was, with alkaline, is open the cuticle and drop in a little tone. So it kind of filled my color without having to use a full filler. So it gave me more control. Then I put in my 5 on top of that. And when I put my 5 on top of that, it just drew it in, sucked it up, and then it was perfect balance. So does that help? Okay, good. I got it. Perfect. So those are the little things that I think about every day and that we forget. And it's really simple to do, but it's just backing your steps up a little bit. So here's the chart that I want to share with you so you can use this for a tool in any color combinations. This is something that I get at ABCH every year. I always get this book. They have a site, and under their education learning tools, they have this book, and you can purchase it, I think, for $30. I have like 2 or 3 of them. And what I do is I take the swatches and I work with all the levels. So you have the blonde levels that you can work with for creative color or vivids. You have the gray, and you could even create a beautiful red formulation with these levels and the darker levels and the lighter levels that you see below. And you can even formulate them and share them with your clients. So you can take them completely out. It has a percentage of gray, and I'll take it out of the wrapper so you can see it. But they're great tools to work with. And remember, the swatches are always something that are going to be more resistant just because they're pre-treated already. So these are great tools to have. I have like 3, 4 of these books at home that I work with. And just for me, it's just to create color palettes when I'm being creative for color shoots or something. Or like, for instance, I'm going to be doing some wigs for Sunny Anderson, and she wants me to work on this. So I have to play with that palette to see what I'm going to work with. So those are just different ways and different things that you can use to be creative and to have fun, and then to customize your formula and share it with your clients. Say, hey, look, this is what I formulated for you. So that's just another idea for you to play with. So back to the book. What are other combinations? So let's talk a little bit about mixed colors, because mixed colors are something that I think we can use that we also are fearful of because they're a direct dye. We have them in semi, and then we have them in our tinta line, in our tinta brand. So with that, what you're going to do is you can add the percentage. Now in the back of the book, it's going to give you different suggestions on how to play with them and where you want to mix them. There's a chart in the back, so it tells you exactly how much you're going to use in that formulation. It's right there for you, and it's really simple. But here's what I like to do. So I like to consider if I need, let's just say that I'm doing a blonde on blonde, and the blondes never want to be dark. So even though we feel like a level 10 is perfect, but we know that it's not going to give me the coverage, it's going to look too sheer, I might have to drop down to an 8 or a 9. But in doing so, knowing that an 8 or a 9 on gray hair is going to look a level lighter anyhow. And we always forget that. We always think, oh, if I put a 9 on there, it's going to be too dark. You're working on white. So when you're working on white, what happens is it's a little bit more translucent and it's a little more clear. So you want to consider that. So a 9 or an 8 isn't going to hurt you. It's going to help you. It's going to be to your benefit. So let's just say that I'm using in the UC an 823. And she feels like it's going to be a little bit too dark. But remember that 823, if I want to add some mixed color to it, I'll go to the secondary color, which is the 3, and that's going to be my primary color that I want to add to. Meaning I'm going to turn around and I'm going to add a little 033 to it. And I know that 033 here looks really orange, but it's a great amber blonde to add to that 2-3 at a level 8. That you can actually get better coverage and more saturation without having to pre-soften. So that's just another thing that you can use in your back pocket tool that I like to work with, especially when I'm working with higher levels of blonding and gray coverage. So that's something that I go to, and I kind of was fearful of them at first when I started 8 years ago with Keune, because I didn't know how they worked. I only wanted to make pastels out of them and get lifted, but they're really a great misforgotten tool that we have in our swatch book that you can work with in addition to the other color ranges, especially in your reds. So I know that sometimes if you're using, let's just say, a 6.4 for great coverage, but you know that you need a little bit of warmth. Could I do a 6.3? Absolutely. So now you have 50% brown in the 6.3, and now you have 50% brown, and now you have 50% brown in your 6.4, right? And then you have a little bit of 3 and a little bit of copper. But what if I added just a little bit of 033? That's going to give me more reflect in my color, and it's going to give me the translucency, and it's not going to brown out, because reds tend to brown out when they oxidize. or look brassy. So if I know I want to make that sure that it's vibrant, because I don't want to go to a 4-6 and add the red into it. And I don't want to go any brighter, but I just want to make it look more realistic, like a true auburn. Then an 03 is going to always help me in addition. So how many grams would I use? I would use maybe 1 ribbon inch in my total combination. First, I'd put it at the bottom of the bowl, and then I would add my formulation. Here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to compensate for your mixed color in your mixture and your ratio of developer. I've had this conversation with another friend who's a colorist that I respect, and it works, and I've seen it work. She considers that part of the ratio. So if she adds, let's say, a gram, and you have 30 grams of color, she mixes the developer with 31 grams equal parts. So that's not how we teach it, but I've seen it work too. But I like to stay by that rule and keep, using that rule because it helps me. And I know that I'm getting more pigment saturation and not more alkalinity. I'm not getting more alkalinity in the color or the acidity from the developer for lift. Does that make sense? Because those are two things that you have to consider. Is it the tube and the color that's giving you the lift or the gray coverage? Or the deposit for gray coverage, or is it the alkalinity? It's a combination, right? So let's consider that. So if it's a combination of the two, that's where we have to decipher what type of developer are we going to use in that gray coverage. So let me give you an example. And I can only think of her name. It's an old client that I used to have, Jerry Mills. She had a twin sister. And if I wanted to use, let's just say a level 8 on her hair, or maybe it wasn't covering enough, and I wanted to go with a level 7, or if I wanted to drop it even further down, I would increase my developer to get a lighter version of that tone versus going higher. That's not giving me the blend or the coverage. So let me repeat myself so I'm clear, because you guys are looking at me kind of like, what? So let's say I'm using a level 8 and with 20 volume, and it's worked great, but all of a sudden she's becoming a little resistant to my formula and it's looking a little bit drabber. I will increase my volume of developer then to give me the half a level of lift that I need, but I'm still saturating it with a level 8, so I'm still kind of cleaning it up. It's the opposite of what you would do with adding more alkalinity, say in the UC series. You're adding more developer, which is acidic, getting the level of lift. So you're putting more gas into your car or your tank of gas in order to get further with your destination. So that's going to help you to get better coverage. Now, here's the other thing on your destination timing, on your trip. Sometimes it's going to take us a little longer to get there, right? There's different routes. You can take the 30-minute route, which is normal timing. You can take the 35-minute route. That's just Google will tell you, okay, there's another route. It's just 4 or 5 minutes longer. The best route to take in gray coverage when it becomes resistant is the 45-minute route. Okay? I know that probably would drive you crazy when she's looking at you or she's thinking, okay, I know they time you. They self-time you all the time. They always are telling you, oh, isn't my hair ready? Is it ready to take it off? Is it going to damage it? They don't know. So it's really interesting. I always say, look, it's going to sit here 45 minutes because I need that processing time. Your hair's become more resistant and I need it to stay on there. Now, if you're troubleshooting and it starts to become a little bit longer and it's not taking the way you thought it would, now you have to reformulate and you have to consider, okay, what kind of developer am I working on? Am I working with 20? Am I working with, some people use 10 for deposit only, depending on what level they're working on. So you always want to consider that and what you're working with.
Hey, George.
How are we doing so far?
Yeah, we have a couple questions, and if Angela would like to unmute so you could ask if you feel comfortable doing that, or I could read those. I know her first, oh, there you are, Angela.
Here I am. If my dogs bark, I'll mute.
Okay.
Well, so now I've been, like the other color line I use, Oligo, they say no heat, but you can put a processing cap on it to help it stay moist. Do you recommend a processing cap?
Okay, so I've worked with a couple of friends from there.
Yeah.
And I noticed that about what they do, and it's just to create condense some of the warmth. You know, I know that we say, you know, scalp heat and all of that, and that can be a myth or not. Some people believe it, some people don't. But I do believe we emanate some type of heat, and you'll see the bag fog up. You can absolutely do that. Absolutely, especially with resistant hair. And then if you're doing other things like pre-softening, or if you're double glazing, meaning if you're glazing, let's just say I have a client and I see a little bit of hot pockets. And if I'm talking too fast, please forgive me because I've had a lot of caffeine. So Bill's over here telling me, chill. So if I feel like she's got that little bit of warmth and it's not completely covered, I do a glaze. I do a glaze over it just to create shine, but I do a glaze because I want to lock in that color by layering more tonality onto my color. Because remember, our demi-permanents are very, very translucent, and they're sheerer than our pigmented tinta. So it really does give an extra layer of protection in that color. It's an extra step, it's an add-on. It does a lot for me, it does a lot for them, but more importantly, I can add that service on. So now it's an express service on top of that to lock in that coverage. So I hope that helped, Angela, and definitely go ahead and use that.
Yeah, and then my other question, somebody wants to be really bright, vibrant red, and they have, you know, 70% gray hair. Obviously, we don't want them to look like, you know, the women of the 80s with that red. You know what I'm talking about?
Totally got you. Totally got you on that one.
What formulas would you recommend to make them look like a beautiful redhead?
So give me a level. Give me a particular level. That
Let's go with level 8.
Okay,
Yeah.
so level 8.
Yeah.
So are we talking on the copper side or on the like fire engine red side, the cooler side?
Let's go with, is there an in-between we can go with? You know,
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
Like okay.
So one of my favorites, and it's a go-to, I think, is 7.46. Can you see it? Okay. It's a beautiful combination of a copper red, but I like it because it's balanced a little bit. It gives me that red, but it gives me the vibrancy of the gold. Now, here's what I would think of when you want that. You're going to anchor. If she is 80, what would you say the percentage is?
I said like 80% gray.
Okay, so good. So 80% gray. She's got 20% of her natural level, which is what?
Let's go with level 5.
Okay, good. Because it's really hard to read that darker hair with that light going through it, because it makes it look lighter when it, or darker, excuse me. And if it's not washed, it looks even darker because of the grease, the oil. So let's just say that if I put a 7, it's going to look about 8.5 or 9 on that 80% white. So I have to think of what is it that I can add to it to put and anchor a little bit more pigment, but not walk away from the brightness or the tone.
Mm-hmm.
So a perfect candidate would be, for me, in mixture, would be a 7.3.
Okay.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
now you're filling your color, you're creating that brown base in there, and it's still higher than her natural level, so it's not going to look dark. And then your 7.43 is going to be vibrant, but not hot.
Okay.
So it takes away that salmon or that shallowness in the tonality that we see. It looks like, oh my God, she's like a salmon. So that'll help to just anchor that color in. The other thing that you can do is pre-pigment. We have pre-pig, and it works really well, but I think people shy away from it just because of the results that they get when they're drying it off and they see it. It's very pinky, salmony color. Mm-hmm. So it will help, and the only thing that I would suggest in that is if you want really permanent results, it's perfect for tinta. Okay. If you don't, then you can fill with semi. So you can still fill, you have so many options in the brand. So you could fill with a semi and get a base in there. And then but you'd have to take another step. I'd have to rinse it off and then reapply my target color. Sure. So those are things that we have to have, think about and how we schedule them and really budget, because that's coming out of your pocket. And Absolutely. It's now considered a gray coverage. So that's a great question. I thank you for that, because it's something I think that we forget about too when we're doing it. Now, I know there's about 12 of us on here, so I know some other people might have some questions. And if you do, I don't see you. So if you want to play, if you want to be us to see you, all you have to do is hit the video on the bottom and you'll show up. Right, Karen? So that
Right.
it can show up.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. How else are we doing? Anything else that we can think of? I do have one. Okay, so I want you guys, when you get back into your salons, I want you to play with a limited edition 718. 718 is a beautiful, beautiful, and I know this term is really unattractive, dishwater blonde.
I can say that is the truth. I just colored my daughter's hair and it is gorgeous.
It is a beautiful, well-balanced color. And again, because of the ash at a level 7, it's a 7, which has got that brown in it. It's got that 1, which is your ash, and then the 8, but the 8 is a beautiful natural brown. So it gives you this beautiful, beautiful dishwater blonde. It's perfect for shadow roots. It's perfect for gray coverage. It's well balanced. It's another one that I think we're going to forget in that category is the 1/8s, the 1/5s, the 2/4. 2/4 is another one that is a favorite of mine because 2/4 do not fear the copper. Remember we were talking about the warmth and gray coverage? That's a perfect blend of a pearl and a copper, and it also gives you a beautiful level 7 taupey blonde. It doesn't give you a warm copper blonde. So I know that 4 is kind of like, oh, I don't think I could use that because it's going to be too hot. It won't be, especially if you anchor in just a little bit. And I say this all the time. When I'm using any other, color formulation like a 773 or a 1/8, and I still have the lack of coverage that I'm looking for, there's no reason why I can go in with a 3/8 or a 0.3. I'm remembering you're having that brown with a little bit of warmth in it, so 50-50. Again, that's going to add to my ratio and round it out. So that's important. And then what I can do also is I can always, in addition to that, is add a mixed color. So depending on that, if you want more vibrancy, thinking about that, Angela, if you want more vibrancy, there's no reason why you can use an 044 in there as well. Or you can even, if you wanted to, add a little bit of the 44 in level 7 on that gray coverage. Just remember that our 44, sometimes it's an intense, but in mixture can look a little bit more browned out or a little bit more kind of eggplanty. So just remember that with the 44. So that's when I would think I'm going to use a 44 in my mixed color versus a 744. Because anytime you overmix it with the other colors, it turns to get a little bit burgundy, if you will. And that's just the build of the copper. That's just how they're built. Any coupler that's in a 4/4 will always do that. So it's comprised of a purple. And purple always is what makes copper. People don't realize that. And I learned that many, many years ago. So I always considered that's when I saw that happen, I'm like, oh, well, that's a 4/4. It makes sense. Because it's copulated, it's comprised of a purple, a red, a blue to make a copper. So that's important to understand. I send me back to back. What's the question I have here? Let me just look at the chat really quick.
Yes, George.
Yes, my love.
Kelly was asking if she used semi back to back, would it make it a permanent color? So I just answered her question, letting her know that it doesn't make it permanent, that it's still a demi-permanent.
It doesn't make it a permanent, true. But the opposite exists for tinta. So I know that's confusing to people. So if you use a tinta with double 10, you will make it a demi-permanent. You will shear it out a little bit. So if you don't have a pull-through glaze that you want to match up, so let's just say you use a color in, like say a 646, but you don't have a 646 that you can pull through, and you can take your 646 to double 10 and pull that through, and you'll get a beautiful balanced demi-permanent, and that'll help you to get that pulling through the ends. Now, the reason why I say that and pulling through the ends is because I'm trained by people that I never really pulled ammoniated color through the ends, and that's why I think demi-permanents are so, acidic colors really, really dominates in that field to give you no buildup on the hair. So, or more alkaline, which damages the hair, especially when you're using dimensional color. So that's a good one. So there's another new one here. What do we have?
Yes, it was a question about the limited editions, and so I just typed in the answers.
Oh, yep, you got it.
Okay.
Cool.
What other questions do you have?
Let's see, there's got to be some more. How are we doing so far, everybody? Is that your baby? Hi. Mickey, how you doing? Good?
Hey, George, I
Yes, my
also
love.
see Amy Evans on the call, and Amy is a longtime Keune user, and she's been joining a lot of the calls, so I'm so glad to see her here today.
Hi, Amy, how you doing? Hi, Kelly. Let's see who we got up there. I feel like
Kelly's been on a lot of the calls.
Hannah, Elizabeth, Allison. So
Wendy.
we got a lot. So we have what? Wendy. Oh, hey, Wind, how are you? I just saw you right in the middle of the screen.
Okay,
Hey,
we
Kelly.
have a question here.
Right, go ahead, Kel.
Okay, and the question is from Allison, and she said, would you ever place tinta pigment directly from the tube on white stubborn hair, let's say the hairline, before you apply the regular gray formula?
So, Allison, that's an awesome question. I think it's something that we used to use back in the day called pre-softening. So pre-softening, yes, absolutely. If you use it directly out of the tube, raw, with no developer, place that on and then go to your target level, whether it's darker or lighter, it doesn't matter. But a perfect solution to that kind of a pre-softening application would be an 8-level gold, or even a 7-level gold if you want a deeper result. So just consider that. Now, remembering that it's at a higher level, even if you want to deposit a lower level of color, it's not going to interfere. It's only going to enhance that coverage. So that's a great thing. And I think Kelly was on here. She had a question a minute ago, or she's up there. Kelly, did you have a question? I can't hear you.
You guys answered it just a minute ago. I don't know if I'm unmuted or not.
No, you are. I can hear you. It's perfect.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
I
Kelly.
was the one. Thank you. I was asking about the semi becoming more like permanent color as you do them repeatedly. And I'm going to be honest and say that I wasn't familiar with George, but this is a real treat and a bonus for me because he's great and I'm getting a lot of information, and I've not used Keune that long. And so this has just been a wealth of information, and I appreciate that.
Oh no, Kelly, thank you so much for being on here. And I wanted to ask you, what was your what were you using prior to using Keune, if you don't mind me asking?
Aveda.
Aveda, okay, cool. So I'm versed in Aveda, and I've worked with it before. And the only challenges that I ever had with Aveda, it's a beautiful color line, is that so many different formulation changes, and the ratio for me was a little bit of difficulty. But back to Aveda, I think what's going to help you, if you have that understanding of Aveda, it's really going to be good for you. And it's going to help you in your formulation because you're used to those pure toned colors. And
Right.
That's how you want to consider tinta when you're working with it. Consider it's a colorist color that you can mix and match. You have so many options. It's creative. It's not, I mean, we have our guidelines. Let me tell you, we always do. But as a colorist, we always know that sometimes we've got to bend the rules a little bit and almost break them. And sometimes they're not as conventional, but they make it work. As long as we always understand the fundamentals and the principles of color, or the law of color. And that's important to understand the windows of alkalinity, the acidity that you're using. But here's back to the question about a demi-permanent becoming buildup. We do not have any dimethicone in our color, so you don't get any buildup of color around the hair shaft. It's easier to remove than most. And if you're having difficulty and you're having a color challenge where she says, I love being a redhead, but now I want to go to blonde, here's a suggestion that I might offer. What you can do is, one, you can remove the color or softly lighten it, but don't use a decolorizer. Use a high lift, and in our series, we have something called 1000, and we have something that is 2000 right above it. 2000 is our bleach alternative. It's great with the booster. It gives you beautiful lift in foil packets. It's awesome to work with. It's approximately probably about a level 12 in lift. When you consider the level system, that's where I look at where it sits. And it doesn't have a base, so it's always going to expose the undertone. It's always going to give you warmth. But back to removing the color, if you use 1000, it'll gently remove that color and give you color to work on that you can change it or alter it without it using bleach. Here's why I wouldn't use lightener or bleach is that the persulfates in bleach will actually drive the artificial pigment into the hair color or into the shaft. So I know that some of you may have been using back in the day, a color remover where you had to do the color, it was another step, and then at the very end of the process, you would take developer and put it onto the hair. And when you put it onto the hair, what would happen is it would go dark. And the reason why it would go dark was because there was remaining pigment in the hair that wasn't effracted or removed. In that, the persulfate drew the color in, so you had a lighter version of it after you rinsed it. So that means you didn't remove all of the pigment. So it didn't go away to hair heaven. What it did was it just didn't infract it enough. And that's what bleach does. But when you use a high lift, because it's an alkaline source, it softly, gently removes that color pigment and takes it away. So without the booster in the 2002, because there is sulfates in that. Where the 1000, it isn't. So if you use the 2000 alone without the boosters, it becomes a 1000. So that'll help you that way, Kelly, to remove. Now, it will not build up in the hair. I would say it's probably the technology in the color that I've noticed. And I noticed that when a girl came to me with some magenta hair and I wanted to use a semi over it, I thought either I can neutralize that color and then lift it and get a brown. In other words, I would take that magenta and I would use something opposite, like say a blue or an ash, to brown it out. And then I would highlight and lift it out. But our semi, you shouldn't have any difficulty removing it. Or if you have a color change, and it will not build up in the hair, so you don't get a residue of color, and it'll maintain its translucent your visit of your touch-up, and that's why I like using semi-color. I know that the range is growing. It's going to constantly evolve because it's one of those things that I think in the European world, what I've noticed is they use a lot of their permanent color lines in order to refresh. In America, North America, we don't. We use, or we're accustomed to using, a demi-permanent type of a glazing system or a demi-permanent color that doesn't have an alkaline source. But with that, I will say that there are other brands that in the bottle, they are an alkaline source. Until you add the solution to it, then it becomes acidic. So if I didn't use the developer that goes with it that's dedicated, and I use a volume developer, it's going to turn into a permanent tint. Ours will not. So just remember that. That's really important. Did that help you, Kelly? I don't know if she's still there.
I believe so.
I
So
believe so.
George, guess what? It's already 2 o'clock. That hour with you went by so fast.
Shut the front door. Are you serious?
Yes.
Time
Oh
does
my
when
God.
you're having fun.
I guess so. Did I help everybody with anything today at all?
Great information.
Oh, thank you, Mickey. I appreciate that. So here's what I want to offer to all of you before I leave, is that there's any time, and Wendy, you know this, Karen, and all of us, Jamie, we all know that we're always here for a resource for all of you. You know that. You can always call the hotline, or Amber, or Karen, or Jamie will take you up on that. But if you ever have a question or in the moment, you can always DM me on George Colorboy Geo. That's my Instagram. Or you can use Messenger on Facebook. And I have a really good person that's always keep me abreast on stuff. And I will get back to you and help you in any way that I can. And if I don't know, I'll always resource it and ask some friends and find out so I can answer the question for you. It may not be brand specific. It's always going to be color specific, meaning how the color works in any brand. It's the law of color. So that's how I was taught, and that's what I teach. I'm just really hope it was helpful for all of you today.
Absolutely. George, thank you so much for sharing with us today. You're such a great coach and a mentor.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're much appreciated. So
We'll
I
see
know
you guys soon.
Jamie has
Take
typed in
care.
the hotline, and she'll send you a follow-up letter and the recording.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Stay safe, be healthy. Great luck with all of you on your reopening. I hope that you're all safe and sound out there. It is a whole new world today, and I know that you're going to embrace it the way we always do in our industry. Our community is such a huge group of caregiving, and that's why we have such big-hearted people out there doing what we do, because we really love servicing clients. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate every one of you, and I hope that all of you have a great day. Take care.
You
Talk to
have a
soon.
wonderful birthday, sir.
I
Thanks for letting
will.
us
It's a
feel
big
a
one.
little
It's a
piece
big
of
one.
that birthday.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.